So here's the dilemma. With this piece, do I fill in all these little marks, fill in like this valley section here, and take out all these creases, these stretch marks from the molding of the metal? Or do I scan it in and then redraw it and then remove all of these marks? Because to fill in all these holes and to sand it all flat, it's a lot of work, but is it going to be as nice? This back section here, it looks like it's been cut out with a teaspoon. It just looks terrible. The whole thing is I still want to keep the look of the parts. I want to keep that slight curvature in this back section and this section here where the grill fits. So those characteristics I still want to keep. But what do I do? Do I mold it, or do I cut a new one on the CNC? These are the things that I think about. The bottom section I'm definitely going to mold. That I'm just going to pull a mold off. And that'll be quite easy to do. There's no point to cut that on the CNC.
Okay, so what I found is really important for good scans is the kitchen table. Yeah. Okay, but seriously, when I'm doing a scan, I've recently found out that even if you're scanning in a small object, the small object option is terrible. I don't know if it's just because of the software, but watching a few YouTube videos, you'll see that it doesn't work very well. So I almost immediately always use medium and large size objects. For this scan, I'm going to try features and markers. And I'm going to up the resolution to around about 0.5. There we go. I don't want texture. Apply. Scan settings. That I just leave as default. And let's get going. So hit play for a preview. There's our preview. So on the back of the scanner are two lights. So this is your distance indicator. So if you go too close, it goes red. You want to set it around the green. If you go blue, you're too far. So green is like optimum. And then all that you do is you hit play over here. But here's the part that I've been working on. I actually sprayed it with acetone and baby powder, but I've been touching it so much I've been wiping it off. I did scan this previously, but I didn't get any video of it, so I'm just doing it again just to show you. I've put on the reflective markers just to help with the scan being located. I've actually stuck them onto little magnets so they can be reused and taken off much easier. So let's get into the scan and I'll show you how quick and how easy it is to scan this front section in. I'll stick you over there, something like that. And we start scanning. Okay, that's it. Okay, I think that's good enough. Let's have a look. So there you can see the dimples where all the holes were. So now I'm just going to cut this out. Let's go again. Something like that. That's better. Invert and we delete. So I've imported the surface into SolidWorks. I'm just going to turn off edges. It just makes it a little bit easier on the GPU. See, it turns a lot easier, but there is the surface that we scanned in. Just a few little extra points. What I found is when you're doing the scanning, if you just use some masking tape and you close up all the holes, it gives you a much better finish on the scan part. If you leave the edges open, or holes, or anything like a hole open, it gives you a very jagged edge on the hole. So just a little side point, you can see I've closed every single hole in on that part. Okay, let's get started. So now we need to break down how we're going to go about drawing this. And the easiest way is, for me, is to do subtract drawing. So I'll draw the bulk of it, and then I'll take away all the little details. You'll see what I mean as I start drawing. So the first thing that you're going to do is draw in this back surface here. There we go. That is simply by drawing a line on the top face, which is then extruded upwards. Next is drawing on the top surface, and then I trim the two, and then I knitted them together and I put a fillet along that edge. So you can see there's curvature over here going up, and there's curvature of this going outwards. Okay, moving on. Here you can see the front section that's been drawn in. If you look at a little bit more detail, if you look at the sketch, we edit the sketch, now you can see what exactly I drew. There we go. So I just drew along the bottom here, I drew a sketch along, and then I just extruded that sketch upwards to make that face. Then I knitted it and I filleted it. Next was to draw the center section. I drew it as a separate piece, and then I cut out that section and I put the section in. And that's all knitted together. Here I'm just drawing a little bit of extra detail. I'm doing this, I just hide this body once again. Here I've just drawn in this little lip that runs along the edge here. On the original part it looks terrible, it's not uniform at all. So I've just drawn in that edge. Next is a stack of fillets. There's a lot of fillets that I had to draw in along here to get this edge right. So that's all of those fillets. Next was to do these cutout details. So the easiest way to do this is to draw a solid. They're like upside down pyramid type shapes. And then to convert the solids into surfaces, and then to do a subtract, to trim them. And then you end up with something like that. And then you join these two surfaces together. Ba-boom, and a little bit of fillets. And there you go. That's how those are drawn in. And then same for this side. Extrude that basic shape. Do some subtraction. And there it is. And then one more. So this one was a little bit more of a complex shape because it had that little curvature in it, which I thought looked quite nice. But exactly the same again, draw your solids, delete one of the faces to make it into surfaces, and then just trim it in. So there it is, knit the two surfaces together, and filleting. There you go. I think that's looking pretty good. And exactly the same story with these two end pieces. There we go. And I think that is pretty much the part finished. Oh, I just did a cutout here. And I just offset the surface just a little bit. I think it was 0.5 millimeter. Because that then enables me to see where to trim that hole out. So yeah, that was that. Next is drawing the mold. So at this point, this is just the surface. So it's easier to make it into a solid by thickening it. So I thickened it 0.1 millimeters. That just makes it a little bit easier to do the molding. So from the mold, I draw a parting surface. This is where the mold is going to be split down. And then we draw the actual mold itself. So this mold is not a closed mold, it's just 1/2. So there's the mold done. This mold will unfortunately not fit on my machine. My machine is not long enough, so I had to cut this part in half. And that's what I did here. I'll then flip this piece around. So that'll fit on my machine, and then I just gave it a little space there so that I could cut the two parts in half again when I glue them back together. Put some edging on, and there we can see what the finished part is going to look like. Next step, let's glue up some material.
It's looking pretty good. So now it's time to epoxy it. I've written down the coordinates
of where the machine is, so that tomorrow, once the epoxy is dry, I can load up the next file, which is a very fine cut, and then I can recut it once it's got the epoxy shell on it, which acts like an eggshell, and it makes the surface really hard. So that's the job for tomorrow. For now, I'm just going to carry on removing these plates. That one's gone. Still got this one to go. Take these ones out, and then I'll probably scan them as well. And the reason for that is just purely because of the way this panel looks. If I have to take a mold of this specific piece, it's just going to look like a pig's ear. The quality of it is so poor. You know, there's so many little dents and scrapes and everything. It's just not worth it. So I think drawing it in CAD and then recutting a mold where it's nice and straight and flat, and you can actually see this little accentuation in here. We can make it more definitive so that it pops really nicely. So that's the job for the next cut. Anyway, I'm going to carry on here. Okay, mold is finally done. Finished cut came out really nice. So the last thing to do now is just to cut it out. I'm going to be using this 12mm cutter, but the problem with it is that the shank is thicker than the blades. So the moment you cut past this depth here, then the shank starts rubbing. So the only thing that I can do after that is change the bit to this bit here, and this will allow me to go that little bit deeper into the wood without the shank rubbing on the wood. In a normal application, what you do now is you'd spray this plug with a high build primer. You then flat that down, get that to probably about a 400 grit finish, and then you'd spray it with 2K paint, and then carry on from there from making your part. But that adds another element to making this plug. To make one part it's not really worth the time, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do again is something that is maybe frowned upon, I guess, and that is to apply the PVA first. and then to wax on top of the PVA. And just to explain why I do this, there's two main reasons. The one is that when you apply the PVA onto the mold, it sticks really well. Whereas if you apply PVA onto a waxed surface, it bubbles and it doesn't want to go down nicely. So when you apply the PVA directly now, it goes down beautifully and it leaves a nice skin. And then you wax on top of that. The other reason is if you apply your wax now and then your PVA on top, when you pull your part out, your PVA comes with it and your PVA stays on your part. Then you've got to wash your part off and then you wash all the PVA off. Then if you have to make another part, you've got to PVA it again. So that's why I apply, as I say, PVA now, which really bonds well to the mold, and then I wax it. So it's very backwards, I know. A lot of people are like, what? But anyway, it's what I do. But before I do that, I need to fill in these holes, fill in this join line. I've damaged the plug here. I don't know what I did there. I think maybe the bit hit it or something happened there. And then just give it a light sand with some 200 paper. And then it'll be ready for making the part. And then I need to decide what I'm going to do for the part. Two options. The one is just to wet lay and then back bag. And the other option is to infuse. Still haven't decided which way I'm going to go. To wet lay and wet bag is quite fast, but I think you get a nicer part if you infuse. And then again, the layup. What sort of finish do I want to go with? The one side of me is quite liking this chopped fiber, forged fiber. There is a side of me that I do like it. There's a side that I like, but there's a side to it I'm like, no, it's freaking terrible. Anyway, we'll probably make two and then choose. Well, let's keep going. Next step, PVA. This is the stuff I use. Nikon Blue Skin PVA. So the whole purpose of the PVA is to create a barrier. I just put on one thick layer. I've seen some guys apply multiple layers, but I don't think it works as well because when you start applying the next layer, it lifts the layer that you've just laid down. So for me personally, one thick layer works the best. And you'll see if you apply thick enough, it goes down like glass. It's just to try and get it as even as possible. And then I'm just going around the edges of the mold as well because I'm more than likely going to have a little bit of spillage and just helps release the part a little bit easier. Yeah, as I say, one nice thick layer. So I use a gas torch just to take off all the bubbles. It really improves the surface finish, but you can still see there's a ton of streaks here, but that really doesn't bother me because the clear coat will be fixing that. I'm not trying to pop out the mold parts that are done. That just requires a ton more work. This is just a quick, easy way to make really high quality parts. It does require a bit more work, but nowhere near as much work as what's required to make parts that come straight out the mold. So as I was saying, the gas torch just removes the bulk of the bubbles. A lot of the bubbles will pop as the PVA dries. The gas torch just forces the big ones to pop. So you can still see how thick the PVA is. It's really thick, really jelly. You can even see in this corner here, you can see a bit of blue that's still there, which is fine because once it dries, you'll see how that shrinks back. So if it's puddled a little bit, it's really not a problem. Obviously you don't want massive pools of PVA, but just little puddles like that is fine. It's more important to get it on thick. We'll come back in an hour or so when it's dry and you'll see how it shrinks back. Ram wax. So I've used all kinds of waxes and I just keep coming back to this ram wax. It's great stuff. So waxing, wax on, wax off. Good few coats, 5-6 coats of wax. Wax on, leave it for 20 minutes, wax off. And with this system, you're pretty much guaranteed a release, a clean release. It's not like chemical release or semi-permanent, where it becomes freaking potluck. It works great when you first get it, and the moment the stuff starts to get old, I'm talking a couple of months kind of thing, then you're taking a gamble. Well, that's been my experience anyway. 20 minutes, repeat. The next mission is prep work. Cutting the carbon to size so that it fits in nicely. So I get a nice overlap over here. And then I need to cut the vacuum bag. I need to cut the release. I need to cut the flow. I'm not going to use flow media. I think the first one I'm going to do, I'm just going to wet lay and back bag, and I'll see how that turns out. If it doesn't turn out great, then I'll probably do a infusion. So to measure the length of the carbon that I'm going to cut, I just cut a piece of tape, and I'll just lay it in here just to make sure that it covers over the lip. So I know my fabric must be that wide. So I'm going to cut my fabric to that length. Yeah, let's get cutting. So this is special carbon because it's 1.5 meters wide. This is peel ply. I'm going to be putting a little section on in this area of the mold, and that's because I'm going to be bonding to it. So peel ply leaves a nice texture to bond on. So that's where those other pieces are going to bond to. This piece here, once you've made this, is going to be bonded on to that section. So that section there needs to have a surface that will work for bonding. So one of the things that I hate about peel ply is once it's gone onto the part and it comes to peeling it off, you can't see where it is because it like fades into the part. So all that I'm going to do is stick some tape on the edges so that I can see where the peel ply starts and finishes. Next mission is preparing the bag. So obviously the two ends of the bag is open, so that needs to be closed off. So I'm just using tape to apply to one of the edges.